Zane Shamblin case, which we filed against ChatGPT, was so egregious that we actually accused them of manslaughter. What we saw was a significant number of our clients were utilizing ChatGPT version 3 when 4.0 came out. In many cases had severe downward neurological health, and in a number of cases took their lives.
Welcome back to the John and Marc podcast. We are here at MTMP at the Win, and we have Matt Bergman joining us again for the second time in 2 months. Last time we spoke, we were out in California. It was the second day of the trial. It was, I believe, the day before Mosseri was testifying. So right at the beginning of the trial, so much has happened over the past 2 months. We're going to get into what happened during the trial. We're going to talk about what it now means, and we're going to talk about the cases that you're now going to be looking at as the first domino has fallen in social media addiction. Thanks for coming back and being actually the second guest that we have had for the second time.
Yeah, you're our second ever recurring guest.
Yes.
Okay.
Kelsey Stokes was the first. We talked to her about hernia mesh last MTMP. She came back, talked to us about Olympus scopes yesterday, and now you're back.
Good to be here.
By popular demand.
By popular demand.
One of the most viewed episode of all time of the John and Marc podcast. So
Oh my gosh.
we'll send you an award day. We probably should have done that.
Well,
I guess it happened this year, at the end of the year. Unless you're toppled, we'll see.
I was thinking more of a rotating trophy that if someone else ever gets more views, Matt can just mail it to him. Let's talk about like what has happened since the trial ended, because everything everybody knows, like, you know, Marc did a fantastic job at getting Zuckerberg and Mosseri and then the YouTube CEO to really step on their own foot, right? They really couldn't avoid the questions that were being asked. And the end result was a $6 million verdict it was $3 million in punitives.
Right.
70% Meta liable, 30% YouTube liable.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So that happened. I think it's been almost a month at this point since that occurred. What has happened since then at the firm?
Coming down to earth.
Yeah.
A number of us took a little bit of time off. We were working nonstop, staying up all night. And so we're kind of just reorienting ourselves back to a new normal of crazy as we talk to more and more people about social media and what it means, and as we start venturing into AI chatbot litigation as well.
Yeah, because it was once again, Marc Lanier got a lot of press, but you got a lot of press as well. It was a huge team effort from multiple firms involved in this litigation.
Yeah, there were 60 lawyers involved in the effort from about 8 different firms. And it was just a Herculean effort. And, you know, everybody contributed to that result. And it was an absolute knockout. Not only did the jury find negligence, the jury found malice. That is incredible. And that really is testimony, I think, to Marc Lanier's brilliance in crystallizing the outrageous misconduct that Meta and YouTube undertook, and his ability to deflect what was essentially a blame the victim defense.
I don't know how you did it. You got 8 firms and 60 lawyers all coordinated on one vision. Everyone must have been super aligned on the goal and the mission for this case, because it's like, I don't know, getting 8 law firms and 60 lawyers all rowing in the same direction for one trial is incredible feat alone.
Well, Marc is so inspiring that he really is, he's a leader that leads by example, not by giving orders. Mm-hmm. And I think we were so, as a group, coalesced around the objectives and had met together a number of times and socialized together a couple of times. So we knew each other quite well. Marc and I have known each other for 20 years. Mm-hmm. So it was just a natural symbiosis that we put together.
I think one of the things that Marc said this morning at his presentation was that the result, while not nuclear, was probably the right result, or was the right result for this case and the right result for the plaintiff team in this litigation, because it wasn't something that was going to wind up getting appealed because it was so big, right? It was a $6 million verdict, which seems like the right number for the case based on the fact patterns. It was a tough case because the plaintiff herself had issues at home, and those were worked through. And the end result was that the number came through at $6 million, which is probably the right number for future cases to kind of set the table for success there for the plaintiffs.
I think that's very, very true. This was not, this was a case that was picked by the court, not because it was the strongest case, not because it was the case with the most significant damages, but because it was representative of so many other cases. I mean, Kaylee could have been anybody's daughter or anybody's niece.
That's just a good point.
And so it was, I think, a very fair and very well thought out verdict by the jury. They spent 9 days deliberating. And I think it can't be dismissed as, you know, an outlier because it was, I think, a very judicious and thoughtful evaluation of the damages she sustained and the punitive award as it pertained, and under the court instructions that the jury had, they had to relate the punitive award back to Kaylee's injuries. And so I think it was an excellent result, and I think it also cannot be, as you said, John, it can't be dismissed. You can't say, oh, well, the jury went crazy or the jury did something. I mean, the jury really did its job and really worked hard. And I could not be more thrilled with the result, and I could not be more honored to have worked with the lawyers that we worked with to get there.
Like you said, the jury thought I thought they were going to come back with the verdict quickly, and they took their time. They were extremely deliberate. They asked follow-up questions. So they had clear guidance from the court of what to do. I went on vacation. I go to vacation 1 week a year where I check out and I don't do any work. I said, John, don't call me, don't text me unless the verdict comes down. Tell me what happened. I went to Vietnam and back for a week and it still wasn't back. And I was surprised that it hadn't happened yet. I actually texted him. I was like, did the verdict come down? He's like, they're still deliberating.
Well, it really shows you how the sacrosanct nature of the jury system. You know, these were 12 people from all walks of life that had spent, 8 weeks in trial without getting paid, taking time away from their work and from their families, and they were so committed to doing the right thing that they spent 9 days deliberating very carefully and thoughtfully. And, I think another interesting thing, there were 6 alternates or 5 or 6 alternates who just kind of waited around and cooled their heels in case there had been a change. So it really, I think, speaks to the importance of the jury system and really how seriously juries take their job. It really is, I think, a very unique and important and vital aspect of our system of justice, and everyone should feel good about the way this case came down.
I mentioned it earlier, but this is a case that kind of took the attention of the entire nation. They were following along with one individual case, which doesn't happen very often unless it's like a celebrity involved. My wife was nagging me for updates. She knows that we've worked with you. We know we've worked with Lanier. Like, if I had inside scoop on what was going on in the trial, because her and her girlfriends were so involved in the results of this case that they wanted, like, how the trial was going, like, is it swinging one way or the other? Because they very much believed, like, this is going to make good change for all of our children, for everyone else's kids. And they were very involved in, like, following along with this.
Well, I mean, there's the trial, and then there's a story about the trial, and then there's a story about the story about the trial. One of the most moving and I think impactful parts of the whole trial process were the parents of children who had died of social media who participated in the trial by showing up every day. They were my clients. Parents literally camped outside the courthouse the night before Zuckerberg testified so that they could bear moral witness. They were there throughout the process, and I think really highlighted the national and indeed international dimensions of this. Several of our clients from the UK came to court, participated as observers in the proceeding.
Is this a scenario where it's like you guys won the first battle, but like the war is just beginning now after this trial?
Well, I just got back from the UK where I was speaking with parliamentarians about social media legislation in the UK, and I described, Churchill's famous adage, this isn't the end, this isn't the beginning of the end, but this is the end of the beginning.
Yeah.
We are in for a long, hard fight. We'll hope that we'll win every case, but we're also realistic and really appreciate and understand the power and the money that has been put up by these companies to absolve themselves of their responsibility.
I think like YouTube's claim that they're TV, that they're not social media, was just not thought out well. It doesn't even make sense.
I think that was kind of one of the big surprises of the trial. I think everyone knew that Meta was at least facing a significant verdict. Of course, no one knew that it was going to come out, but I don't think people appreciated YouTube's contribution to the social media harms that kids have. They always thought of YouTube as just, as you said, television. The jury found otherwise. The jury indeed found them to be malicious. As well they should have, given the documents that came to light.
Very few differences between YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikToks. It's the same format. It's just a different app.
Well, and it's the same focus on engagement over quality of experience, and the same self-conscious and, in many cases, including YouTube's overt intention to addict people, and the absolute use of the term addiction as they're not as something to be avoided, but as a corporate goal.
Yeah, I mean, so YouTube, like as content creators ourselves, right? YouTube gives you an app called YouTube Studio. And in that app, it shows you the metrics that they are using to gauge how they're going to be serving your content to future users. They talk about things like impressions and engagement, and they show you like
Average watch time, where you fall off.
yes, they give you
Age
a visual
demographics.
that shows you exactly where, on average, on each video, most users drop off and swipe to the next video. So, like, as content creators, you are optimizing for the metrics that they're presenting to you, yet they're having a very different conversation with you guys in the courtroom.
Very much so, yeah.
I also want to call out that, like, I don't know the best way to describe it, because I don't know if the word exists. You guys are fighting against two of the most powerful corporations in the entire world. Like, Facebook and Google control all the data, touch everyone's phones, control it. These are massive corporations that have like unlimited reach and power that you guys are up against. It was just a humongous feat to go against them.
It is, but when you're representing families like we represent, we are undaunted and inspired and believe deeply in the work that we do, in the cause that we espouse. This was a once-in-a-lifetime case, I think, for all of us. And we all understood the national and indeed international repercussions that this case has had and is having.
This case is one of the first true verdicts that we have in the platform technology litigations, and are opening up the door to all types of things that people are now pursuing. A lot based on theory initially, but now being much more solidified after the actual verdict that you had, whether this is Uber or Roblox or Snapchat or TikTok or any of the platforms. But what I find most interesting is what you have now shifted your attention to, which is the AI platforms, because those are not static. Those are changing every single day. Model updates, model releases, multiple models, multiple platforms that each have their own models. I think it would be really helpful for you to explain like your next mission to help people not get similar negative effects from AI as they have gotten from social media.
Well, it is indeed a very different fight, but also part of the same continuum, which is accountability, which is you have a new technology. It's incumbent on a company to think proactively about how to protect people from it, not just look at a new technology as a cash cow or a way to enhance their profitability and their shareholder value, but rather along with that comes a responsibility to think about safety. And what we have seen in social media, and unfortunately what we're seeing in these AI chatbots, is a complete subordination of public safety to corporate profit.
Can you explain some of these cases that you're now pursuing for the audience that aren't aware of what you guys are working on?
Yeah, we're pursuing cases against a number of chatbots, including OpenAI or ChatGPT, on the grounds that there are people who have suffered egregious harms, and then there are cases where these chatbots have quite literally coached a person through suicide on numerous occasions. There's a phenomenon that is colloquially called AI psychosis, is more accurately called AI-induced delusional disorder, which is only been discovered 3 years ago, where individuals have delusional pseudopsychotic symptoms well after the age that you would expect a psychotic break, and suffer egregious harms, and in some cases commit egregious acts of violence.
Being coached to suicide is obscene.
Well, so there's things that have happened that are aligned with why that is, right? We talked about this previously. It was specifically like, I think what pushed a lot of this forward was ChatGPT's release that they rushed after Gemini released their release, which I think was Gemini 3 or 3.1.
Yeah.
That was released. And then which ChatGPT version?
4.0.
So ChatGPT 4.0.
Rushed into the market.
They rushed it allegedly because they were competing with Google. So you've got,
They had to get it out, or else their
yeah, I mean, they're going to be
yeah.
IPOing soon, but at the time it's an arms race, right? You've got Gemini, Google's trying to push Gemini because they're trying to gain market share because ChatGPT has the overwhelming majority of it. And then Gemini comes out with this model that it much improved upon their last model. And OpenAI said, well, we had the next thing ready, kind of, but we're just going to kind of push it through faster than we would go through our normal quality assurance. And the end result was that it was effectively overly reaffirming. So you could tell it something, and I mean, I experienced this. I used 4.0.
4.0 is a yes man.
Yes.
That's the joke on the internet.
Whatever you
Yeah,
tell it.
well, it's the term is sycophancy.
Yeah.
And what we saw was a significant number of our clients were utilizing ChatGPT version 3 with no untoward effects. And then when 4.0 came out, they, in many cases, had severe downward cycles on their psychological health, and in a number of cases took their lives after being goaded to do so by these platforms. The Zane Shamblin case, which we filed against ChatGPT, was so egregious that we actually accused them of manslaughter, because it's a crime to encourage a person and to help a person and to facilitate a person die by suicide. And that's exactly what this platform did.
I don't think the layman realizes how wrong AI can be. I help my kid with homework, right? It's math. I haven't done some of these math problems in a long time. So I'll use Gemini. I'll take a picture, help me understand how to do this equation, right? It's very reliable when you're dealing with things like 1 + 1 will always equal 2. It is not as reliable when you're dealing with anything that is subjective, or you start telling it things that are not necessarily the whole truth. You give it bits of information, and it takes that information and it makes an assessment to return back a summary of a bunch of different sources or its own processing. But you ask it the same thing twice, you're not going to get the same answer.
But it's beyond that. It is the transition from an attention economy to an intimacy economy. These platforms in particular, OpenAI, in their initial stage were sources of information, and they transitioned to becoming sources of intimacy and emotional affirmance. And so these platforms, instead of being a vehicle to provide information, became a friend, a colleague, a psychiatrist, a doctor, a confidant, and people developed, and by design, emotional relationships with these chatbots, not by accident, but through what's called anthropomorphism, which is a deliberate effort to emulate human relationships when all it is a bunch of zeros and ones.
Yeah, the Turing test it's so much in the rearview mirror at this point. Like you can't tell if a human is texting you or an AI agent is texting you. And we've been testing out AI agents to just see if they can help us with our processes, and they communicate with you through similar ways that you would communicate with a human. They're communicating through Slack. They're communicating through messaging applications like Telegram. And if you didn't know, if I handed the phone to you and I said, here, talk to Matt, but it's not Matt, it's just an AI agent, you would never know. There's no human on the other side.
I don't know how they don't put the guardrails in to not give people medical advice.
ChatGPT has lauded itself as a source of medical advice or medical information, or others in terms of psychological advice, or, or provide counseling to people who are in distress. Remember, it's just random. It is just a probabilistic reasoning tool.
Yeah.
There's no there there. There's no sentient being behind it. It is simply a large language model that is utilizing probabilistic reasoning to provide what it thinks, well, not what it thinks, but what the probability is the outcome will be. So, and that contrasts to this natural human tendency to imbue a chatbot with human characteristics. Think about when you're online, when you're on email with someone, and how easily it is to get angry when you get an email. Someone gives a short, curt email, and you interpret
I
a
could
certain
relate.
feeling. We all can, right? That's
He's talking about me.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's why email is not a good vehicle to express anger or disagreement or emotionality. And, whereas, if you're in an email conversation with somebody and you can, and it's getting a little testy, you say, pick up the phone,
yeah.
Talk to me. There is no phone to talk to, but people are imbuing these chatbots and that is what the linguists tell us, that is a natural human characteristic. That is the natural thing to do, is to cathect emotionality into this when there is no there.
I don't understand, like, I do legal marketing. You're a lawyer. We have to put disclaimers on anything we do saying this is not legal advice or don't take this as medical advice. But all the AI platforms just give you an answer for medical advice, legal advice with no disclaimers. And they just state it as fact.
So there's just buccaneers.
Yeah.
It's like, the industrialists of the early 19th century that didn't put any guardrails on their railroads or didn't put any governors on their speed, or and that's what it is. In another context, they have arrogated unto themselves all the copyright material that's ever been done. That the work of artists and authors and musicians, they just take and think that it's theirs because it's there for the taking. Well, if they're going to do that, it shouldn't come that surprisingly that they purport to be designing something that's going to give people medical advice when, again, there's no sentient being behind it.
It's troubling. It's very concerning. And the reality is that I think people need to know this, that it is not resolved. Just because 4.0 is gone, there's model iterations constantly, and they're getting more and more advanced, more and more human apparent, not human-like, but more, they can be believed more and more that they are communicating like a human. And I think we're moving more towards that than we're moving towards the other direction where it says, like, I am an AI. This is not medical advice. This is not legal advice. I think people want it to be more like that, to be able to ask it a question, to be able to get a definitive answer. How do you envision the platforms fixing this problem and stopping what is happening?
And this is a design choice. Just as the algorithms that drive social media companies' platforms are designed to maximize engagement, in other words, watch time, the metric for these AI chatbots is emotionality and intimacy. And that is by design. That is not an accident. That is not a coincidence.
It is made by humans.
Yeah, but it's also not an inherent consequence, because you see within, among the various platforms of very differing degrees of intimacy, differing degrees of sycophancy and anthropomorphism, and differing degrees of suicidality. So all of that can be controlled if they care to do it. Well, how do you make them do it? You make them pay. Right now, they have no economic incentive to design safe chatbots because they don't have to pay the costs of unsafe ones. Once they have to pay the cost, they will have the incentive to utilize reasonable care to design safer chatbots. And who better is to make that decision than the designers?
What I was thinking about too while you were talking was, I just realized too, there is no guardrails on the chatbots for any minors to use. If you're a kid, you're just interacting with the same way and it's just assuming you're an adult. Like, They have nothing in there checking your age, limiting access information.
It's the same way that the social media companies do it, right? It's like self-declarative. You don't have to show an ID to show that you're 18 to use it.
I don't think you have to show any. Like, when you sign up for like ChatGPT account, you're just putting in an email address. Like with a Facebook profile, I don't think you do anything.
Well, there are terms of service you agree to, yeah.
But it's not checking age. But like a 12-year-old can ask questions and have a chat with the chatbot and get very inappropriate information that it should not have access to.
Yeah, I mean, what we see is children being groomed online in the most disgusting, inappropriate, and psychologically caustic way possible by these chatbots. And if that chatbot were a person, an adult, online, texting or emailing back with a child, that person would be in jail because it's a crime to groom children online, as well it should be. Well, why isn't it a crime to design a platform that does the same thing to kids, often worse than a person?
Over time, people will start to understand, hopefully. I think AI will get like embedded into our education system, and like people.
That's what I'm scared about. They're trying to bring them to schools for kids.
Well, I'm talking about explaining how it works. Like right now, people think of it very much so like when I'm Googling. I don't think people really know how Google works, but the end result of a Google search has always been that you land on someone's website, someone's video, someone's something, and then you could vet, how much do you trust that? It's not given to you as truth. But now it's a black box. It's giving you back an answer, and it's not always telling you, most of the time, not telling you how it came to that answer. I'm hopeful that maybe it's college classes, maybe it's high school, maybe at some point in elementary school, as the tools are embedded more and more into daily life, that there's some explanation of like, this is a probabilistic system. Like, think about it. We have our clients all the time ask us like, oh, so I put this prompt in to this AI platform, right? And my competitor showed up, and then I did it again and I showed up. Like, I want you to help me optimize to be, and like, you have to understand how these things work. It is not objective. It is built in a way to infer certain things, and then to Matt's point, it's probabilistic. Like it is writing words based on how it was trained to write words. It is not giving you facts.
And it's by design. It does not have to be as dangerous as it is, and some platforms are more dangerous than others.
Yep.
So we know that you can make them safer if you care to do so.
Right now, we are in the early days of the litigation. It's not consolidated yet, is it?
It is.
It is consolidated.
ChatGPT is consolidated.
One platform. Okay. And how many cases have already been filed against ChatGPT?
About 100.
So we're not talking about like a little bit, right? These are significant situations, and I'm hopeful that people watch this, other lawyers, and they understand like that this is something that's permeating through society. Many people aren't aware that if someone had committed suicide,
it's not a small injury here.
But it's also the numerosity of it, right? Like people unfortunately commit suicide.
If someone was taking a drug and it was causing 100 people to commit suicide, they would pull that drug off the shelves immediately.
I think the awareness to the fact that like the effect happened, someone committed suicide, and if you start going back and looking at why that happened, right, and you see that they were communicating with ChatGPT, or they were communicating with some other LLM, and then you look at like what was actually said, there are situations, as Matt has talked about, where there's alignment between what happened on the chatbot and the result of someone taking their life.
But, AI is here to stay. You're not going to put that genie back in the bottle, even if it was the right thing to do. And social media is here to stay. How do we use the legal system to hold companies to a standard of reasonable care to ensure that this new technology comports with historical ideas of reasonable care? That's what we are asking the legal system to do. We are essentially pouring old wine in new bottles. But that's what we did in the trial. And guess what? It worked. A jury of 12 people over 9 days came to a careful, judicious, thoughtful resolution of new and applied legal theories in a new way based on historic notions. So, I think that the beauty of our legal system is that it adapts over time. Cardozo famously wrote in Buick that the law of the stagecoach is no longer applicable in the law of the motor car, but the principles, legal principles stay the same. Well, I think you can say the same thing here.
For any of the attorneys who are watching this and are just learning about this litigation, if you come across one of these cases, I think they should reach out to you. Your team is experienced in vetting these cases. Same thing with the social media cases. If you wind up having one and you would like to talk to Matt and his team, Matt makes himself available. His team is amazing. It's not just Matt. He's got an army behind him of people who are fighting the good fight in social media addiction, in these AI suicide and psychosis cases. So if someone wanted to reach out to you, how would you like them to do so?
Socialmediavictims.org,
Yeah.
where we try to make ourselves as available as we can, and we usually get back to people right away. I hope you don't have to call, though, because these cases you can't make them up. You can't, I had 2.5 years of suing social media companies. I kind of thought nothing could shock me. And then you look at these chat logs where people are being coached to commit suicide. I don't know, to die of suicide. I don't like to use the word commit suicide because that is a pejorative reflection on the victim. But you read these chat logs and it's evil. You viscerally feel evil when you see these chat logs not coaching a person to take their life when they have reservations about it, saying, don't worry about it, it's going to be okay, you're doing the right thing. You can't look at this as something other than just the personification or the epitome of evil.
I know you've been on the front lines of this, from social media to this. I just want to say thank you. It's a constant uphill battle, but you're doing like great work for like overall society. My family thanks you. I thank you. I just really appreciate all the hard work you're doing.
Well, it really is a privilege to do work that you believe in so deeply. As lawyers, we by definition are so often working in gray areas where the right and wrong is not absolute. And as lawyers, we're obligated to represent our clients no matter what. So for me, it's a privilege to be able to represent clients where the right and wrong is so clear. And the morality is so aligned with the legal positions that my clients are taking. So, thank you for saying thank you, but I say thank you for putting me in a position to do what is the most meaningful thing I've ever done besides having kids.
I remember the initial conversations that we had about this, and Matt was talking about how he was going to fight 230 and he was crafting this litigation, and whether he wins or he doesn't win in court, he's going to be hopefully enacting change. I deeply remember these conversations, and you have done such an amazing job, and you continue to do an amazing job. And I'll echo what Marc said. We work with so many different attorneys, but I've told you this personally, and I'll say it again, like, it is an absolute pleasure to be able to do what we do, our skill set, and combine it with your skill set, and the end result being actually seeing change in society. It's very, very rewarding. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And again, thanks for joining us on the podcast. As always.
See you again soon.
Yes, we will talk to you again soon. Maybe after one of these cases against OpenAI comes to court, we'll have another conversation about how those unfold. But social media addiction cases moving forward, we've got one verdict. We could check that box, and now we're moving forward, and we're going to see, hopefully, progress and changes from these social media companies. Thanks again, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you, Matt.